Apparently, there is a game of chicken being played between the Australian government and Facebook. You see, the Australian government is trying to do something that the European Union has already done, and I believe that link tax is going to become a law in the EU starting June. So Facebook is probably experimenting with how to get around it. Now, if you don't know what a link tax is, from my understanding, the platform would have to pay a fee to the publication that's being linked. So if I was to post an article from the Daily Dot on Facebook, then Facebook would have to give a fee for the Daily Dot. Now, obviously, Facebook doesn't like this. So what they did in Australia is that they put a restriction on the news that can be shared. So they went like, okay, well, if that's the case, then no links to news outlets can be shared on our platform. So if you try to share any article from a publication, you're going to get this message. This post can't be shared. In response to Australian government legislation, Facebook restricts the posting of news links and all posts from news pages in Australia. Globally, the posting and sharing of news links from Australian publication is restricted. Now, obviously, this is going to hurt the news publications, which had a lot of traffic being directed to them from Facebook. For example, you find an article in The Guardian, and you click on it, and well, now you're on The Guardian's website, and while you're there, you might see something else that catches your attention, and you click on that as well. Well, all that traffic is now going to just disappear. So the people that are most affected are the mainstream media. It's kind of funny because I get the feeling that the government of Australia wanted to punish Facebook for their insolence. Because in a statement made, Facebook was told that it can leave Australia if it refuses to abide by Australian laws. Obviously, they just managed to abide by Australian laws by not allowing people to link to articles at all. But the important thing is that the reason politicians don't like Facebook is, as they pointed out, they compared Mark Zuckerberg to the dictator of North Korea, Kim Jong-un, is because Facebook is using its power and influence in order to shape opinion. And I don't know why Facebook is being singled out here, because obviously Twitter and Google do this as well. Take, for example, the recent case of Rush Limbaugh dying and compare it to the case of RGB dying. Now, in a normal and civilized society, we don't make fun of the dead. It's poor taste. The dead cannot defend themselves. They cannot give you a response. And death, being a tragical event, means that it's very upsetting for the people that cared about that person. But you don't notice the same standard being applied. People who would make fun of RGB dying were obviously being suspended from Twitter, while right now, people who are making fun of Rush Limbaugh dying, some of them even blue check marks, have their hashtags trending on Twitter. And then you also have the TOS, which are changing every month on these platforms, and they make sure that people who can express certain views that are legal, they do not appear on social media. For example, there's a lot of people in Romania that were complaining about the lockdowns, and they didn't like the fact that they're unable to go to work and feed themselves and their family. But such controversy on social media would be considered as harmful, and science deniers, and these people would get banned. Banning these people means that social media does not reflect the actual view of society. The people that are on social media create a complete different reality to that you have in society. For example, I highly doubt that just walking around in society, you're going to have many people cheering and being happy that Rush Limbaugh has passed away. But if you go on Twitter, that thing is trending, and it creates the illusion that, yes, well, many prestigious people in society, and certainly not a group of fringe, radical, deranged individuals, they definitely cherish the fact that a man has died. A man that, by the way, most of them haven't seen in their entire life or neither have spoken to, but they have their 5 minutes of hate. So you can make the argument that the social medias are somewhat damaging because they create these illusions, these fake realities that people who spend a lot of time on the computer are going to buy into. But at the same time, I don't think the Australian government or the European Union government is going the right way. They fail to anticipate the fact that these social media companies can just say, well, okay, if you want us to pay a link tax for linking to news, then we're just going to forbid people from linking to news. And then there is no news, there is no tax. A better thing is what Poland is doing by deciding to pass a legislation that is going to fine Facebook and other social media companies millions of dollars every time they ban or censor someone that is considered to be free speech. The Polish government says that they have been enough through communism to learn the value of free speech, and they are going to punish these social media companies for banning someone who didn't do anything illegal. It's going to be very interesting to see how that works out, because banning people from sharing news is one thing, but banning the entire population of Poland is definitely going to hurt social media's bottom line. And what's even more interesting is to point out that this, in the long run, can hurt Facebook as well. Because you see, while it does hurt the publications, the news outlets that are now going to be unable to get a huge chunk of their traffic from places like Facebook, there are still a lot of people that use Facebook, believe it or not, in order to get their news cycle. And as they log on to Facebook in order to check the news, the company also checks their privacy and looks at their data and then uses that data, compiles it, which is pretty much Facebook's business process, and then sells those compiled information and data to third-party sources in order to make money, and also bombards those people with ads. But now that the people are going to be unable to see the news feeds on their Facebook page, well, maybe they're not going to use the platform. So in the long run, this might also hurt Facebook. But at the end of the day, it's just going to be a risk assessment. What's more expensive to them? To just pay the link tax or to just have people signing out? And it's important to point out that with the recent purges, Facebook has lost millions of users, people that are banned. And it is my opinion that when you start banning millions of people, maybe it's not the people that are the problem. Maybe it's your company. Maybe it's your terms of service. Maybe it's the way you do business. Because I can understand banning a couple of extremists here and there. I can even understand banning a couple of hundreds of thousands of people because they are just way too extreme and unsavory for the masses. But when you start banning millions of people and shutting down that many accounts, yeah, I'm starting to think that the people aren't the problem, and the problem is definitely with the terms of service. And in order to respond to this accusation, Facebook has said that they're going to create an independent body, which is, by the way, going to trial Donald Trump. Yes, Facebook now is like a government and they have a Supreme Court. And it's quite fascinating because if you look at the members that are on this independent body, I couldn't find a single conservative, not even one. So yeah, it's definitely going to be very independent. And what's also interesting, this is what I find fascinating, and I'm going to end with this, and I want you people to think about it, right? Donald Trump has been impeached a second time. And by not convicting him, then the legislator decided that he did not incite to violence. Because had he incited to violence, he would have been convicted. So therefore, legally, he is considered not having incited to violence. But is Twitter going to allow him back? I mean, Twitter considers misinformation if you doubt the validity of the last election. That's misinformation. It's a bannable offense. But Twitter saying that Trump incited people to violence, even though legally speaking he has been exonerated, why is that not misinformation? And why does Facebook's Supreme Court have more authority than the actual legal court of the United States? Well, I mean, it's not a court, but you know what I mean. I mean, they had the hearings and the politicians, and they presented evidence, and there was a discussion, and there was a vote. But anyway, I can definitely see why governments do not enjoy these social media companies, who are definitely starting to take more and more leeway over what people should hear and what people shouldn't hear, and what gets to be promoted in the search engine and what doesn't get promoted in the search engine. So it was just only a matter of time until it's going to be codified into legislation by some nations. And by the way, don't think that the codification is always going to be against the companies. From what I am understanding, the United States, especially the Democrats, want even more policing of hate speech. And they want to make sure that the new 230, if it ever gets repealed, is going to have these platforms receive government protection only if they police hate speech. So don't think that governments are always going to intervene against the companies. Some governments might definitely enjoy the companies. It does definitely give the establishment a lot of power to have these corporations as their friends. Oh, and finally, comparing Zuckerberg with the dictator of North Korea. The irony is not lost, especially considering that Facebook might actually have more money than the entire nation of North Korea. Seriously, these social media giants, they have more wealth than certain governments, so I wouldn't be surprised if that's actually the case. But there's also, 2 years ago, you had these news coming out from Facebook. Apparently, the moderators are severely overworked. The guy even had a heart attack while on Facebook's premise, and no one rushed to help him because people were afraid that if they even spent a second trying to give aid, they wouldn't be able to fulfill their work quota. So, yeah, I mean, you know, is the comparison really that far off? You be the judge of that. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you guys in the comment section.